welcome to the Priestess Mercury podcast. It's been a minute.
It has.
Life, as we all know. And we'll open today with our invocation. Please join us in this invocation. And we call upon the north, the east, the south, and the west, earth, air, fire, and water. And we're calling upon the full moon in Scorpio and Uranus in opposition, and Saturn in square, and the sun, the secret key, and all of our angels, ancestors, and allies, and everyone listening, all of their angels, ancestors, and allies to come forth to bring us into center, grounded, true self, awake and aware, heart open, in the seat of the soul, like the lily coming through the mud. May Priestess Mercury course through Matt and I in this conversation flow today. So mote it be.
So mote it be. And so maybe we should get started. It's been a hot minute. We've had a lot going on personally that required a little bit of a break taking, but we're back. And we'll dig in today with the full moon in Scorpio that just happened yesterday. Yesterday in the evening here on the West Coast. That was at like 8:30 at night. So just as the moon is, nice and high in the sky and it's starting to get dark.
8:30 Monday, that is, depending on when you're listening, April 26th.
Right. And so now we're on that track from the full moon heading towards the new moon in Taurus on May 11th. And so, we should probably talk today about that latter half of the moon cycle and, what was going on with the moon, the full moon yesterday, and, where we want to get ourselves situated toward with the new moon coming up in a couple of weeks.
And just to clarify that the full moon is super strong. The energies are super strong 3 days before, 3 days after. If you're listening to this 3 days within Monday evening, we're still super in it. And that also the way the full moons and the new moons work is that the full moon energy is a 2-week cycle going from the waning full moon to the new moon. And when we have the new moon, that'll initiate a month-long cycle, new moon to new moon. But when the full moon comes 2 weeks later, it's the waning portion of the new moon. So it's like the new moon's the broader cycle, new moon to new moon. And then the full moon is like the halfway point, the point where we make room. I like how you said, Matt, we make room. In the witchier term, we banish, release, let go, surrender, make room, clear out. And that the full moon, as it illuminates the big ball of light in the darkness, that is like the bringing up from the shadow or bringing up from within what we need to see in order to make room. So that's, and in dealing with Scorpio, which is the ultimate sign or archetype for excavating the shadow, going deep in and bringing up the roots of what we need to see, wounds, traits, gifts, experiences, anything that we've pushed down or haven't been able to process or have never even looked at before in our life. It even could just be aspects of yourself that you've never really met before that are coming up for the first time even. It's not just, yes, traumas, yes, wounds, yes, hard feelings that you've had to push down. And also it can be gifts and aspects of the self that are really beneficial and beautiful that you haven't been ready for, that can
Right.
also be coming up.
Yeah. I mean, Scorpio is that kind of libidinal energy that comes up from the depths of the soul. It's kind of the intensity, it's the fixedness of our emotions, but it's our emotions in some sense at their most raw and exposed. And it can be a lot to encounter. But we have this full moon at least once a year in Scorpio, and it does ask us to kind of look at ourselves at a more raw state, and to come to ourselves like on it with an honest appraisal, and to let the things out, and not to, like as you were saying, Michelle, repress. When we shove the things back down that we don't like, then they tend to come back at us later on in
And
ways that we don't expect.
yeah, scarier, grosser, gnarlier. And yeah, Scorpio, which I just have to say I'm a Scorpio sun, so I love it. I'm not afraid of any darkness or feeling. But I am tender toward the other archetypes, and though, I want to be tender toward that. Because Scorpio it's very intense. It can be likened to magma, and like volcanic magma, those kind of feelings, or like Matt said, libidinal, as Freud called the libido, not just our sexual. I mean, we tend to think libido is sexual, but it's actually just that motivational energy, that the energy within to merge, to connect, to live, to go forth,
Mm-hmm.
like a very primal base life force energy, and
Right.
all of those moods and feelings that are connected to that.
Right. Because Scorpio was classically thought of as being ruled by, or the house of, Mars. It's Mars's kind of feminine side. And there is a type of uh, drive and motivation that comes from that, that emotional state. It's not just the impulse to life that we get from Aries, but there's that emotional body that also drives us, and that's part of what we encounter in Scorpio. And
Yeah,
it's necessary for all of us. Like we would all be couch potatoes in some sense, or just animals, purely animals, going out there and just living off of our instincts, which is that Aries impulse. But
the Scorpio is what you desire.
right.
It's your deep soul hungers, your deep soul longings, what you really want in your heart of hearts, like that deep desire within you, is Scorpio. And the Scorpio, Linda Goodman broke up the Scorpio into the three archetypes of the eagle as the high Scorpio, the, what are they, Matt? A blanking.
Oh yeah, I'm drawing a
Blanking.
blank at the moment too.
I'm drawing a blank, but the lower Scorpio is the shadow of Scorpio, and the lower Scorpio is very manipulative and controlling. Which, if any of you have Scorpio parents or partners or exes or friends that are lower Scorpio, it's a lot to deal with, because they want to control and dominate you, manipulate you emotionally. Yucky yuck. The higher Scorpio is transformation, and this is where Pluto comes in as the new ruler, when Pluto was discovered, of transforming the compost, the rebirth, the phoenix, that to let die what needs to die, and then to rebirth and to transform. And Scorpios, whether it's however Scorpio is in your chart, when it's a strong personal planet, you will go through constant transformations. I mean, I can say as a Scorpio sun, who I was, I mean, I think this is my third one I've been going through. You wouldn't even recognize me. So your incarnations, if you have a Scorpio sun, and I would even say a Scorpio moon, can, maybe Scorpio moon is a little more subtle or internal, but you become like a completely different person. And then wherever it is, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Lilith, the asteroid, it's like talking about the higher form of Scorpio is to transform. The lower nature, if you're trapped in it, is very controlling and manipulative. It's like you have to get your way emotionally, and if you don't, you will find a way to manipulate the other person to give you your way, make them feel bad, or make, some controlling thing.
Right. Yeah, that shadow side of Mars that where it's the trying to control and manipulate other people.
Right. And that's Pluto in shadow as well. It has to do with power dynamics, power over. And a lower Scorpio, I've known a lot of lower Scorpio men in my lifetime, want power. They want the power over you, whether they admit it or not. Probably will not admit it. So
that's how that usually works.
Yeah, that's how it usually works. No brainer. But yeah, to engage the medicinal, shamanic, spiritual attributes of the Scorpio archetype is to meet your deepest feelings, moods, and desires, and to go through the transformational process that allows your authentic self, your soul, your true self to live out loud, to live on the surface.
Yeah. And, one of the things when we're looking at a full moon, we're dealing with the sun reflecting its light onto the moon. And so the moon becomes really big and amplified. And so we get Scorpio there across the sky from Taurus, which we've talked about a few times on the podcast here, that archetype of the creature comfort and the kind of almost like the toddler with the mother, getting the nourishment and the boundaries set for them. But in Scorpio, we encounter, and the physical, and we get in Scorpio, we get the opposite of that in sense of the discomfort, and the boundaries are more blurry, and it gets harder to deal with where you start and where someone else or where you end and where someone else begins, and what's the boundaries between one another. It can be.
Sorry, interruptee per usual.
That's okay.
Jumping in with an excited idea to play off of your idea of like thinking about the Taurus as the physical body of things. So the boundaries are clear when there's a physical form. It's like, here's where my body ends. Here's the space in between. Here's where your body begins. Simple and questionable. Whereas Scorpio is the psyche, the psychic, the inner realm. So it's like, who knows where I end and you begin. A lot like Pisces, except Pisces is kind of more like the ethereal allness, like diffuse mist. Scorpio is more like, again, that like libido, like the desire to merge, to just, and Scorpio is like really, really close relationships because of that. They want to really merge emotionally and not have a lot of space in between. Scorpio's like the Scorpio in you, wherever it's in your chart, even if there's no planets, whatever house it rules, it just wants that deep merging.
Yeah. And
no boundaries.
There's that. It's a toss-up play between the two, so that a push and pull, so to speak. And then we get that with a lot of the polarities within the chart, that whatever stands across the sky from each other, they tend to pull from each other, and there's a kind of negotiating that happens, and that happens with Taurus and Scorpio, where we want our boundaries, we want we want some easy confines, parameters to work within. We want the world to be simple, and Scorpio is like, no, it's not simple. There is, to have a meaningful interaction with other people, you also have to risk vulnerability, and you have to risk those boundaries, and it's a tough road to walk, because we need both of those. We need to have some kind of security within our sense of self, and also to risk allowing other people in, and risk allowing other people to influence us in a way.
And also, all of the polarities are under one heading. So the Scorpio Taurus polarity, a good word would be resource.
Mm-hmm.
And that Taurus, the resource, it's like your own resources. My body, my house, my money, my boundaries, my things.
Right.
And Scorpio is more the resource of the other.
Mm-hmm.
Like my resource literally is my partner, the emotional energy. Like those who have, like you, Matt, who have like a Scorpio North Node, are meant to find the resource more in another person than in money or one's own personal things, and vice versa. Those who have a Taurus North Node are meant to find the resource more in their own things and boundaries, and have relationships be more separate, still great and awesome in their own way, but just not as mergy. Right. So the Scorpio in a sense is the psychic resource, and psychic not being like divination, psychic being the inner plane. And Taurus is more the physical resource. So
the somatic, the somatic and the psychic, the
somatic and the psychic resources, and that they're meant to balance each other, that you want a nice balance within yourself, no matter where your planets are, and that when they're imbalanced, that's always where the problem is. So it's always, with polarity, is about finding the harmony between those two. And this full moon is very activated in the polarity, because good old Uranus that we've been talking about, that's in Taurus, is actually opposing tight opposition to this full moon. So that means that everything that we've been talking about with Uranus, that's coming in to take you out of the comfort zone of your physical security, comforts, and resources, how Uranus is bringing in all this sudden change to shift that, is opposing the full moon in Scorpio, that's bringing up all of your psychic stuff to take a look at and release.
Right. Yeah, Uranus is robbing you of the comfort, relief, or the easy escape into being comfortable, and not in that bad way of robbing you, but in kind of how we say that necessity is the mother of invention. When you don't have easy access to that stuff and that comfort, then you have to figure out a new way to relate to your body, to the immediate like things around you,
money, your house, your anything that's a physical resource. Uranus is now wanting to upset the comfort zone of that, in service to liberating you from the rotting, worn out, well-worn path, the old stinky comfort zone.
Right. Yeah, it's so it can be a little uncomfortable of a feeling, and especially for those who are born in like the late 70s and early 80s, who have Uranus and Scorpio. You're getting this in conjunction with your Uranus opposition. And so you're already going through this kind of disruption of where you thought you were going and where you need to go, and you're being kind of you're having things come in that are not allowing you to use your defaults so easily, and you have to in some ways reinvent yourself. It's, it's a transit that's like a midlife crisis in a certain sense.
If you're between ages 42 and 44 ish,
yeah,
you're in your Uranus transit right now with that. That's then getting even more accentuated, like Matt's saying, with you have to find with when you have your Uranus opposition, you have to find your sense of self in the opposite. You have to find yourself in Taurus now and not Scorpio. If you are around 42 to 44 years old, you have to, where you might have always felt like it was the other, the partner or the parent or the sibling or the friend, that it's always needing that other to for your changes in life and your sense of self to build and grow. Now you need to be able to find it in your own resources, in your own body, your own health, your own money, your own house. And even if you're sharing that, doesn't mean you have to be like mine, but
right.
more that you're creating space for that. Like, how can I make money that's just from, that I'm making, or how can I have something physical that's just mine, or create something physical that's just mine? How can I tend to my body in a way that where there's more ownership over it? Like, you have to find yourself in those Taurus traits and not as much in the Scorpio. And also that when you were finding it in the Scorpio, you might have been doing it very unconsciously.
Right.
Unconscious codependence, or just like valuing relationships too much.
Right. And there's also, a sense of, as someone who has the Uranus and Scorpio natally, it's also this kind of unconscious attempt to complicate everything. So, not wanting to settle for anything easy, any easy solutions. Like you're always like playing devil's advocate in a certain sense, or, problematizing everything, like nitpicking things out, just because like the simple doesn't exactly work for you very well. And so then now you're coming around, and one thing that I'm having to do is to not overcomplicate things, keep things, find ways to make things simple. It doesn't, when you can engage with something that may seem superficial in a certain sense, but it may give you a sense of groundedness, and it may keep you from, getting stuck in loops where you get in your own way too much, or that complication like makes things harder than they really need to be.
It's good insight. And I also want to pull us out of that conversation with that too, so that we're not spending the whole podcast on those who are in their
Right.
Uranus transit or those with Uranus Scorpio. But that's a really good insight of going more to the simple matter of fact. If you are one of these generational peeps, and coming more into the simple Taurus physical spacious sense of things, and not so much creating all these psychic spider webs with your complicated feelings and thinkings that might see things through a myriad of fuckery. I mean, I can say, right, as a Scorpio sun, I know the myriad of fuckery. And I think wherever Scorpio is, anywhere in your chart, it is that kind of kaleidoscopic, moody, complicated. Control is such a big thing. It's murky. It's really murky, and it's magma, and you have all these feelings, and it's like trying to understand them. And yeah, Taurus is so simple. It's so just like the earth, and just a creature on the earth. Food, sex, nourishment, rinse, lather, repeat. It's so spacious compared to the kaleidoscopic fuckery of Scorpio's entanglements, inner psychic entanglements. And that's a lot of this full moon energy with that polarity, except that Uranus is on Taurus, in Taurus. So it's forcing you out of the comfort zone, out of the stagnation of that simple physical routine or way of life in the physical, and to innovate it. And then Scorpio can scoop up what you need to see to help you keep going. Is you need to change your psyche. You have to change internally. Scorpio is like, you have to change internally.
Right.
And Uranus is like, I'm going to force external change. I'm going to give the world COVID. I'm going to force everyone internal. I'm going to upset the structure of all the toxic institutions. This is it. It's here. The old physical way is gone. And same with your own life and your personal life. There are things that need to change depending on where Taurus falls in your chart. And then we have the square with Saturn.
Right. Yeah, Saturn in Aquarius, up there, kind of the focal point of the pressure that, so we get this disruption of the simple or the routine, or however you want to think about that Taurus energy. And then you get the polarity of that with Scorpio and this feeling these complex, feeling kind of caught in the complexities a bit and needing to kind of delve in there and dive in deeper. And it's, it's creating
the
some
main
pressure.
And then I just want to add right there, when the myriad of fuckery emerges and the complexities make themselves known, the key with Scorpio cleansing is to just feel. It's not to figure anything out. It's not an air element here. It's just water. Right. Feel the grief, feel the rage, feel the sorrow, feel the despondency, feel the confusion. When you can meet the feeling and the mood and just express it, it detangles the myriad, it cleanses and purifies, and that's where rebirth can happen.
Right. Yeah, because one of the key things about Scorpio is that we don't fix things there.
Yeah, and that's what's over. I mean, I'm ready. I'm sorry. I'm just like ready to throw up if I have to deal with one more solution focus. Let's solve this. And that's because there's not enough. It's just imbalance. There's not enough. Just feel it. Just feel it. Just be angry. Just be sad. Don't act out. Don't go punch somebody in the face or something, but just say it out loud. I feel rage. And then find a way to express it. Make a song or take a run or, make pasta from scratch. I don't know. Find a way to like get it out. And same with every feeling. Just feel it. It's amazing that when you just feel, and it's amazing to give someone witness to that. Another rare thing, that next time someone is venting to you, their sorrow, their anger, don't try to be like, this is why, here's how to fix it. Just let them feel it and say, I feel you, I hear you, let it out. I'm here, I'm listening.
Yeah. And even just like, that sucks.
That sucks. Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know what that's like.
Sometimes that's all you can say.
And it's powerful to say that because it validates the other person's emotional experience.
Right. You're not pushing it back on them by saying that it's your fault that you didn't do X, Y, and Z, and now we're going to correct X, Y, and Z.
And you're not automatically saying that feelings are something that's bad. It's like giving permission to feel, and again, I always say this, but you have to feel to heal. Feelings are poop. If you don't feel the anger will turn into a sickness or a rigidity. You'll either become some rigid idiot, or, that's just going to cause war, or you'll develop some sort of major physical illness.
Yeah, shoving in the anger, or telling yourself it's not okay to be angry, or sad, or whatever the negative emotion that you might want to push away. Telling yourself that it's not okay to be that is, this is what we want.
Everyone does it too. Everyone moralizes it. The big one that I see all the time is like, I shouldn't feel this way because I'm privileged and there's people worse off. That's a bunch of bullshit. too. Not only is it offensive to people who are worse off, like
Right.
I know I'm many people's worse off in certain scenarios, and I don't want to be that. Don't use me to make yourself feel better. But also, we only live our own selves. Your feelings are your feelings. Stop moralizing them. We all need to
Right.
stop. It's okay. And privilege just is,
Hmm.
and feeling guilty for privilege just makes it worse.
Right.
And guilt is a pervasive, it's not really a feeling, it's a pervasive neural pathway that stems from an over moralized psyche that has an expectation that it's supposed to be a saint, which stems from our institutionalized toxic propaganda.
Hmm.
And it's all crap.
Yeah, and it's also helpful to know that there will be a time where we'll be in Capricorn energy, and dealing with fixing the structures will be the name of the game. But right now, if we're dealing with Scorpio, it's like you just need to feel it. You need to like just settle into, own your feelings. Like when you can own the feeling and say, okay, I'm angry, you can and you have a place to acknowledge that, not even just to yourself, but that's the important first step. But also, if you have a safe place where you can say, "Hey, I'm angry," uh,
To
it
have
can,
someone to vent to, or even just to write it down. Sometimes it is just yourself though too, and if you don't have anyone, that's okay. I've
yeah. Well,
had
that's
lots
the
of
first.
periods of my life where I've had just myself, and you can let it out just yourself too. And once you feel it, it leaves the body. That's the whole thing about feelings. You can't
Mhm.
moralize. It's like moralizing poop. It's invisible, but it's the same thing. It's just something that builds up in the body that needs to leave the body so that you stay healthy. But the Scorpio is the psychic part of the body, not the physical Taurus part. Like Taurus is the poop, Scorpio is the feelings. They are not synonymous, but the same thing on different dimensions.
Mhm.
And once
Yeah.
you feel it, it leaves. That's the beauty of feelings. When you cry, the sadness leaves. When you say I'm angry and you vent it out in some way, the anger leaves.
Well, and in your one-on-one relationships, and I do want to preface that, when it's safe to do so, there are situations,
Plenty.
if you're in an abusive kind of dynamic, it might not be safe to say that you're angry. But, in most one-on-one relationships, friendships, partners, it's actually healthy to state that you're angry, or that you're upset, or that you're frustrated, or because then you can, it's out there and no one's playing guessing games. And that's that shadow side of Scorpio too, where it's like you're gonna leave it for the other person to kind of figure out where, to kind of subtly nudge them into what the action is you want them to do. Whereas when you vent the feeling, when you have that emotional space, uh, and you let it out, then uh, everyone knows where each other is at, and you
And
can
there's
begin to.
no room for manipulation. And this is really epidemic. This is
Mhm.
topic. I mean, because gaslighting is so pervasive, because moralizing feelings is so pervasive, because the toxic cultural narrative is patriarchal, affecting both men and women equally, is so pervasive. Nobody really understands how to feel. Nobody feels safe to feel. This is why we have Brene Brown, and we have like therapy. We have so much information and support around being vulnerable, because everyone is terrified to be vulnerable. And why? Because that's a sick world we're living in, that we are trying to heal. And
Mhm.
Scorpio really represents that emotional healing. Like Scorpio, Cancer, and Pisces, the water signs, are really there for the emotional healing part when we're talking about healing. So Scorpio, Cancer is more like the nurturing, and the inner child. And Pisces is more like forgive all, we're all one, kind of the spiritual. And
Mhm.
Scorpio is just like, just get in there. Like, what is that feeling? Just say it. And if you do have someone that it's safe to do that with, that's a blessed thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like that's a really blessed thing to have, even just one person where you can be your and anyone knows who's a Scorpio sun or moon, how salty, cantankerous, ragey, moody, bitchy, despondent, despairing, suicidal feelings, not ideation, that you feel on a constant basis. Because when you have Scorpio in a personal planet, you feel intensely.
Mm-hmm.
And in a culture where that's shamed or feared, it's difficult. You know, so yeah.
Right. And right now it's putting a lot of pressure, what we were trying to get to here about the Saturn up there in Aquarius. So we're getting this, what's called a T-square in the fixed signs. So Saturn is getting a square from both the sun and the moon, and well, in Uranus down there, and in Taurus, and the moon in Scorpio. And so it's putting a lot of pressure on, trying to realize, some of these mental patterns that, we've been having to put a lot of focus on lately, especially back when we had all those planets in Aquarius. But Saturn is trying to help us to realize something along the way of how we collectively think. And so
also it's taking us from the ego up into the higher self.
Right.
Saturn Aquarius square is the mental part. Taurus is the body, Scorpio is the feelings, and the mind is squaring it as Aquarius, which is more coming from higher self versus ego. And higher self naturally focuses on the collective and the authentic self. And then Saturn is saying, this is the discipline that you need. So while you're feeling your deep feelings, and while your physical world is getting upset and changed and pushed out of the comfort zone, you need, and it's hard, squares are hard, they're really, really hard. You need to get more into the higher self and out of the ego, because the ego wants to blame and project and go, poor me, and it's not fair and it's unjust. But the higher self can say, life is unfair, life is unjust. This is what's happening. This is the truth of it. I'm going to own my feelings. I'm going to own my experience. I'm going to see it from a zoomed out, larger perspective.
Right. Yeah. And the discipline, I'll admit, like this week, my disciplines were hard, much harder than they had been. And part of that's just because of that push and pull that's happening in the disruption. Like, I all of a sudden I wound up going out and grabbing a car in the middle of the week without any, without any like pre-thought in it. It just kind of happened, and
yeah, because that's true, that the disciplines, in order to be more in your higher self and not the ego, you do need your practices and your disciplines. You need your meditation practice, your yoga practice, your morning routine, whatever it is, because yeah, we're human, not saints. We don't wake up in our higher self. We wake up in our ego. The ego pities, the ego blames, the ego's like, poor me, poor them, why me, why them? It's not fair.
right.
And to get into the higher self, it's like, this is happening because of karma. This is the lesson. This is how I need to look at it. You need your practices. And yeah, the practices are extra hard right now because Scorpio is like, I don't feel like it. Or yeah,
it's that Taurus, like, Alexa, please give me 5 more minutes to sleep.
yeah. Or like Matt going out and buying a car on an impulse. But I think that's in service. Like, I think that's Uranus in service, that quick gets, your own resource, your own car. I think that's actually.
Well, I'm on that, the good end of the Uranus opposition. So I'm starting to, as I was saying to you the other day, like I'm starting to play that country music record backwards.
Yeah.
So Uranus had come in and
joke for those who don't understand, because I didn't.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's that old joke. Like, what do what do you get when you play a country music record backwards? You get you get your wife back, you get your car back, you get your dog back.
Yeah. You're totally playing the country song backwards. you know, I mean, I know that you guys don't know our inner dialogue, but that's been a theme
But
for Matt.
that's, yeah, well, that's really like the Uranus part of it. Like Uranus opposition there is like takes away, all these things that were kind of stagnant. And now I'm on the other end of it where uh, I'm starting to see things, kind of the wheel turning and things coming back in, but coming back in a more sustainable way. So,
And also to get detail to help you guys with your charts, you know, Matt's Uranus is the second house. So it's very much about the car and the money and the things. I mean, my Uranus right now, or Uranus Taurus, is in the third house. So for me, it's a lot about my perception. And that's been my big challenge, is to have like Uranus wants to get me out of the comfort zone of my perception, which is kind of weird because Taurus is the physical, but perception is non-physical. And you can kind of look at it like my local community, because that's third house too. And maybe Uranus is working on that a little slower, but sometimes it's just that, like, because the third house rules the perception, and that's where Uranus and Taurus is, it's changing. It's like you can kind of look at it like it's changing my neural pathway, which would be the physical expression of perception. I have to actually forge a new neural pathway, which I know has been my constant theme in talking a few podcasts ago about going from not being able to multitask to multitask. And there's this I literally feel like this neural pathway in my brain forming, that's a whole new human being, not soul in the upper half of the chart, but human being. Like literally, the me 5 years ago would look at the me today and be like, that's not you. How are you doing that? So if you have a third house Uranus, you can know that it's like you're creating a whole new neural pathway. If not natal, we're talking the transit. So if you look where Taurus is in your chart, you'll see where Uranus is, and that's where the big structural shift is happening. And remembering that the structural shift can be inside of the body too, like in the third house.
Right. Yeah. And so take a look at your own chart and see like where Taurus is, and
Where
you
Taurus
can get a
is,
sense of the themes. You know, the first house is the self, the body. The second house is the possessions, the things around you. The third is a little, zoomed out a little bit more. It's usually the local environment, but as Michelle's saying, perception. It's where we begin to conceptualize the world. The fourth has to do with security.
You're going to go through all 12.
Well, we don't have to, but I just got on a roll there.
I know. I feel like I'm always doing husbandry on the podcast. Like, it's going to take too long. They can look up the houses.
Yeah, just look it up. And if you can go on Cafe Astrology or something like that, it'll give you an explanation of what the houses can represent. There are different, ways of interpreting those, but they, by and large, stay in the same ballpark.
Find what feels right for you, and look up where Taurus is, and that's where the structural shift is happening. Look up where Scorpio is, and that's feelings around that house or what needs to come up and out to be released. Look up where Aquarius is, and that's where you need to focus on getting out of ego and more in a higher self, and more of the practices to get yourself in the mind of the witness or the higher self.
Right. And then, as we work on this, like one of the strategies that can be really helpful is when you have that T square and you get all that pressure on, the Saturn and the disciplines and, decision making and all that. The release for that is down in that last fixed sign of Leo, wherever Leo is in your chart. And that can be a kind of release for you. So, if you want to think about that as your inner king or your inner diva or, whatnot, that's a good starting point. And then translate that for the house. Yeah, your heart.
I mean, that's really the root of Leo, is the heart.
It's ruled by the sun.
Ruled by the
It's,
sun. It's like, I want this. This is what I want to express. It's the inner child, it's the heart.
yeah, and so when we activate that kind of energy from our will as we're dealing with this kind of transit, then what it does is it opens up this kind of what we would call a grand square energy or grand cross energy, which is very potent. It allows for all the things to flow together. Instead of being bottlenecked up there like in Saturn, with Saturn and Aquarius getting all the pressure, and we can fall into those narratives of I don't want to make a decision, I don't want to do the discipline, I don't want to do this, instead Leo is like, well, say what you do want to do, what do you want?
So let's take all this complication and give us each as an example briefly to help the listeners, because this is so complicated. So I want to give my personal and you give your personal. This is how it looks like. Okay. So the full moon in Scorpio for me is in the 9th house, which has to do with travel and inner higher mind. And I have so many feelings that are coming up and out, feeling Scorpio. I want to travel so bad. I have this thing where I need to go to Kenya. I'm thinking about, should I become an expatriate? Although I love Seattle and I think that's my home, but maybe it's not. And I'm like dying to just go on a vacation, but I can't because of A, B, C, D. So it's like, let me just feel the frustration and the anger that I feel trapped right now and I can't really travel. And then in the higher mind part, I have this big idea for a book. And then all the feelings around my big idea, my 9th house idea with Scorpio are like, I don't know if I can do it. I feel scattered. I feel confused. I feel like all I'm doing is filling other people's cups and my cup's not getting full. How am I going to write a book? But then the book writing is the only thing that will fill my cup. So I feel, again, trapped and like longing and confused, right? So I got to just let all those feelings out without trying to solve it. Scorpio. Taurus down in my 3rd house is changing the perception around this and also affecting my local environment. So that's the part where it's like, think about it differently. And for me, that looks like, think of the long game, Michelle, not the moment, because I'm always like moment girl. So the perceptual shift here is like, think about it over time. Maybe Kenya's 3 years away. Maybe you stay in Seattle and trap, think the long game. So that's Taurus, as like trying to create a new neural pathway that thinks about life in a long game instead of a short game. And then also in the local community, it's like, get out there, go out to the local, do whatever you can in the local environment, like shift it up. And then the Aquarius part for me, the Saturn is 1st house, my sense of self. This is where my ego in the 1st house wants to be like, pour me, my cup, so empty, la, 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 la. But when I do my practices and I get in the higher mind, it's like restriction births creativity. This is the grist that's going to blossom my soul. This is the perfect time to be writing my book. So the higher self completely takes me out of pity and puts me into a transformative frame of mind, which is amazing. And then Leo, the secret key, is over in my 7th house of close partnerships and relationships, which I think is a lot of me going kind of like asserting what I want in that way, like in romantic, really asserting what I want there and not what I don't want. And also just enjoying my friendships, as much as I can in this busy schedule. And just like, I don't know, I'm still working on my Leo, but it's like really feeling my heart, my inner child around relationships. Okay. So that's how I am working this wheel, so to speak. And if I wasn't working this wheel, I might feel stuck AF. So Matt,
Right.
how does the wheel look to you?
Yeah. So for me, it's like happening in my, the moon is in my 8th house. And, literally went and got a loan for a car this week. So the eighth house having to be a place of debt, because it has to do with money from others. And
The feelings there. Scorpio's the feelings.
yeah, well, it's the feeling of, that's a big commitment, and feeling a little like, do I have this? Is this gonna like swamp me?
What's the feeling? That's a sentence.
Hmm?
That's a sentence. What's the feeling?
The feeling is being a little overwhelmed.
Overwhelmed. Okay.
Yeah. It's a lot of change really fast. I mean, that's the disruption in Taurus in my second house. And even though I got a job, it's like all the things coming back really quickly. It's just like, whoa, this is a lot.
Okay. So overwhelm in the Scorpio.
Yeah.
Lots of structural money changes in the Taurus.
Right. But these things are all like, Saturn in Aquarius is my 11th house, my dreams and aspirations and goals. And, how do I make decisions in that, where I stay with the eyes on the prize?
Right. That's the higher self. The higher self is like, this is in service to my aspirations. Where the ego might be, what are you doing? What are you doing? Shouldn't do this. You're going to lose your security, or it's happening too fast. The higher mind's like, this is in service to your ideals, your aspirations, and your dreams.
Yeah. And then Leo for me, like, is the fifth house, which in this case, I would translate it as pleasure. What things do I want to feel? Not as a way of not just feeling the burden of the overwhelm, but feeling, the pleasure of having a car now that I can drive, and the freedom and all those kind of things, and feeling those things and saying that I want those things, and having, saying that those are in service to what I want to do.
Yeah, fifth house, the pleasure and like getting to have what you want. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what was that Mel Brooks line? It's good to be the king.
It's good to be. Yeah, well, that's what's cool. So Matt and I, we worked our wheel together. We pulled cards on this full moon. We worked the wheel, and then we created mantras for ourselves. So that's something that you can do, is that you can look at the key, you can look at your chart, see what's happening like we just described. You can also pull 3 cards, like the theme, the medicine, and what wants to be released. And then you can create a mantra, and then you can do ritual on your altar space. That's a way to carry it all the way through, if you so desire, because then you become the steward or the chariot. Fate, instead of fate just carrying you where it's going to carry you, you become the director. You become the charioteer, so to speak, when you really work with the energies. That's the thing about astrology, and any of the internal planes and the collective energies, is that we have the opportunity to create and to direct. You don't have to, no matter what, you're going to be in the movie.
Right. It's that script is going to keep playing out. It's whether or not you step into the role and shape it in a certain sense.
Right. If you think about it, if not shaping it, you're looking more in the shadow energies, right? Where you might fall into pity and stuckness and manipulation and overwhelm and stay there and stagnate. Or you might transform without ever being conscious of it, because, every version of everything exists. So, but that's like, this is just, we're just wanting to give you ideas of how to work the wheel, basically.
Yeah, how to step in and just be present with what's happening. You're not there to fix it. You're there to experience and be a part of it, co-create it.
Yeah. And some of the themes are longer. So like, as we keep doing these podcasts, we're going to constantly be coming back to Uranus and Taurus till 2026, shifting the structure of the physical And we're going to constantly be coming back to Saturn in Aquarius, which is for 2 years, 2.5 years. And then the moons shift every month, every 2 weeks. So that's,
well, the moon shifts every 2.5 days.
the moon shifts every 2.5 days to a different sign. And then, yeah, as far as like following
Yeah.
the waning and the waxing,
Mm-hmm.
that's really,
Yeah, and the moon cycle is probably the most primal part of the astrology. It's the first things that as humans that we recognized cosmically happening is the sun rising and then the moon at night, and how the moon changes shape. It's like the most visibly physical thing in the sky, and so it can be a great thing to tap into. And as we're moving towards that new moon in Taurus on May 11th, it can be great to sit down at your altar and ask the ancestors or the planets or whoever you're honoring there to speak to you and let you know, like, what am I making room for? How do I make room for what's coming in? And doing that daily is a good check-in and giving you like a focus or a beginning for the day.
yeah, you can do that with the changing. I always look at every morning where the moon is and line up with the sign that it moves into. And then, yeah, full to new moon, what can I make room for? New to full moon, what are my intentions? How can I build?
Mm-hmm.
The waning and the waxing over and over. And then if you want to create an altar, that's great too, because then if you have an altar, then you can have a focal point of energy, which is really great for when Uranus is in Taurus, because it's physicalized, it's tangible. And just talking on a psychological level, because all magic is psychology, all psychology is magic, same thing, different lenses. And
It's
that
all alchemical.
the
Yeah.
subconscious, its language is visual and scent. It's not conceptual. It's not the left brain. It's not words. So if you have an altar and you have, a goddess statue, your subconscious is going to be like goddess, 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 higher values of the feminine, whereas if you were to speak the word to your subconscious, it's may not necessarily understand what you're talking about. Like Charlie Brown, want, might just hear a bunch of gibberish. This is what, having a statue of the Buddha. If you look at the Buddha, your subconscious is going to tap in to the Buddha's consciousness and connect. And then this is Scorpio energy too, in that when you connect visually it just happens, the merging happens. If your ego and your ego left brain can't grab on, and it's just concepts to you, like an altar, that concept, Buddha, that concept, astrology, that concept, and it's all just a bunch of intellectual information, that's okay. If you have visual representations, a working altar, your subconscious is going to get it. Eventually, as you do this work, your subconscious and your conscious get closer and closer. Eventually, it's like something opens and you feel it, or you get a sign or a dream, and eventually, if this is you, if you're the type that only understands things intellectually and you have a hard time really feeling beyond that, there's a break and you will start to feel it. And the altar and any visual representation, scents, essential oils, crystals, colors can really help to open that part.
Yeah. I mean, eventually you'll, the more you open yourself up to the subconscious or the ethereal, it will show up for you in the physical because it's there. You're just tuning into it, and you'll start to see the synchronicities, the signs, and this is where having that physical thing of the altar or the tarot card or whatnot that can give you a focal point or to be a stand-in and help you to believe it, that it's there.
Well, it doesn't help you to believe it. It actually gives you the felt lived experience of it. It gets you beyond beliefs. Beliefs are superficial.
Right.
What we're talking about is actually having a lived experience of these spiritual, occult, archetypal energies versus it being just a belief or a mental construct. And that when you have the altar, when you have visual representations, it beckons the lived experience. You're beckoning you're beckoning that, and eventually that happens, and you get an actual living synchronicity or a dream or a sign or just a feeling. And then you're living it, and then you know it's real. When it's just a belief, I would not be into any of this stuff if it was just a belief.
Right. Well, I mean, when I'm saying belief, it's more of just like having faith that something is there, that the stand-in like helps to activate you beyond, it is beyond belief really, and into the physical, having a lived experience of it.
Yeah, I think that's, and like faith and belief are awesome starts. I think faith is deeper than belief, it's a little bit deeper. It's like belief with standing power, like belief over time. And then eventually you get to the lived experience, and that's when it becomes real. It becomes real when we experience it. And it can be frustrating when you don't experience it. And then if you try too hard and you're like, I don't experience it, rawr, then you're pushing the experience away even more. But if you just like have patience and work the practices, though, and have visual representations and scents and colors, and like eventually the lived experience, like Matt said, it's here. And it's kind of, I always think of the snake charmer, charming the snake out of the basket. It's like you have to charm the lived experience out of your shadow. And sometimes it can take a long time. It will happen, and we're over time.
We should honor that Saturn principle. And
yes, good call.
Yeah. Well, it's been good. It's great to be back, and we'll be back again really soon on another Mercury Hour, and to talk the tarot and astrology and healing, which is what we're ultimately about. And check out our websites if you want to learn more. And book sessions and whatnot, reach out to us. Leave us comments on the YouTube. You can reach us at priestessmercurypodcast@gmail.com. Any of those ways, we greatly appreciate hearing from each of you. But until next time, have a blessed week, couple of weeks, and we hope that this touches each of you. So.
May the force be with you.
Yeah, and also with you.